Let's get physical. Jordan here, back again with this week's update on all the physical releases coming to the Nintendo Switch, January 13th until the 17th, week 3 of January. As always, we're taking a look at all the physical retail releases, all the low print games up for order, some juicy imports, our personal spotlight section, and our brand new community spotlight. Remember, if you want to show your support to this little series, leave us a comment with what you are playing in your backlog and what is the most recent addition to your collection. Personally, this week, what did I get? Well, I'm sure you know already. This beautiful baby, Super Robot Wars X, released last week, and I reviewed it. It's more Super Robot Wars goodness, and one of the essential imports in my opinion. Strategy RPG goodness with some of the best style in the business. It's anime mech crossover heaven. The animations here make every other game look like they were made by preschoolers. There's always a risk of feeling fatigue when playing similar games in such a short space of time like I have with Robot Wars T, V, and now X, but I still can't get enough. I know this is an older port, so I really can't wait to see what Bandai have up their sleeve next with a brand new game. If it's anything to go by their usual output rate, it won't be long until we get the next entry in the series. Anyways, check out my review. This week's physicals, Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE Encore is the latest Wii U port to the Switch, and may I say, the one I've been hoping for the most after all this time. For some reason, I find saying the full name quite difficult, so I'm referring to it as TMS from now on. But anyways, TMS was a coming together of Nintendo and Atlus, a dream crossover of Shin Megami Tensei with Fire Emblem, and it could very well be my favorite Wii U game, along with Xenoblade Chronicles X. Well, if you ignore Breath of the Wild, but I think of that as a Switch game. Anyways, it's a great JRPG, and it was basically a Persona game, although with slightly less oomph behind it. It's such a peculiar game that probably shouldn't exist when you think about it, but it really was the outstanding JRPG on the Wii U, and will certainly stand toe-to-toe with the best on the Switch, I am sure. If there's any game that deserves a second chance at life, it is this one, and I really hope you RPG fans out there are going to be picking this one up, because I feel really passionate about TMS, and it's the kind of game that I want on the Switch. Show Atlus, show Nintendo, we want these kind of games. Day one purchase for me all day long, even if I get a review copy. Remember those old D&D ports that were released last year? Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 in one package, Icewind Dale and Planescape Torment in another, and Neverwinter Nights on its own. They were quite hyped ports of ancient but classic games, although when they eventually released they seemed to just come and go, not much talk about them afterwards, but now they are back with a vengeance, as Skybound Games are releasing collector's editions of each of them, and then one ultimate collector's edition with all of them together. Yep, 4 collector's editions are releasing this week, and they ain't cheap. You get all sorts of stuff like pins, maps, dice, stress ball. I mean, just take a look at the links below. I'm sure this will be worth it to some hardcore fans out there. Anyone? Let us know. Right, that's it for Western retail releases. Not a lot, but enough for me and my wallet. Before we head into the low print games, don't forget that if you're new here, hit that subscribe button for all the latest Switch content. Plus, we're giving away a Nintendo Switch Lite when we get to 50,000 subscribers. We're nearly there, come on. Okay, low print games. This week, limited run games are putting up the mighty Switch Force collection up for pre-order on Friday. The collection is coming in 2 forms, 2 versions, your standard release as well as a collector's edition which has all sorts of goodies, including a double-sided poster, an enamel pin, USB stick, and a soundtrack CD. Hey, maybe they're actually listening to me. Anyways, this is pretty much 4 games in one, so you're probably getting your money's worth on the standard physical. The games are pretty good and have always been a highlight when they've initially released, and that's pretty much it for low print games this week. Before we get into imports, just a heads up that all the games mentioned here, if any of them take your fancy, then in the description and pinned comment we have links below as to where you can find them for yourself to purchase. They are affiliate links, so any purchase that you make also helps out the SwitchWatch team massively, and you know, we very much appreciate all your support in this regard. You guys have been amazing, like unbelievably amazing, and it really helps push us forward as a channel, as a team, so thank you. Anyways, imports. In terms of imports this week, well, there's a couple of tasty games to look at. Firstly, let's start with the least interesting one, at least for me personally, although I'm sure a good few people out there would disagree with that. Let's start with My Tetsu Pure Station. This is a visual novel, a Shujo, which means it's a beautiful young girl or something like that. Anyways, it's from Circle Entertainment, who often have their hands on some, decent stuff. The best thing is that it is multi-language with English on the cartridge. Now, as far as a Western release goes, it's entirely possible. In fact, I personally think it will happen at some point, whether it's a standard retail or a low print, I don't know. It's not out of the realm of possibility, so just be warned. If you're not one to feel burned out by importing a game that eventually gets a westernized release, then go ahead and give this one an import. Also, it has a couple of editions from different regions. There is an Asian release and a Japanese release with no discernible difference as far as I can tell, apart from, the text on the box and a small price difference. But also there is a standard release and a collector's edition. This includes a tapestry-like poster, an art book, and the classic 3D mousepad. You know a game has class when it has that, right? Okay, now for the main event, one that many people have been waiting for, one of my most anticipated imports of this year so far. Well, even though I'm probably not going to get it, for reasons I'll tell you in a second. Anyways, the Atelier Dusk trilogy is going to be one of the must-have imports for this year, I have no doubt. Yes, it released a few weeks ago in Japan, but that was no good for us since it was only in Japanese and Chinese. But this other Asian region's release is a beaut. All 3 games on one cartridge with English included. That is an excellent piece of consumer friendliness if I ever saw it. The only downside is that the DLC does need to be downloaded from a US eShop, but it's a minor point that I'm sure we can all forgive. These Atelier games are lovely little experiences. Well, I say little, they are 3 full-blown RPGs, so you're getting at least 100 hours minimum just from the stories alone, never mind if you want to do the post-game extras and stuff. So why am I not buying it? Well, Koei Tecmo were nice enough to send us a digital code for them to review, and I also feel a bit uncomfortable about buying stuff that I already have. If they didn't send it, I would 100% buy this straight away as it is, but I may have to wait until any shred of guilt goes away and I want to treat myself. Links are below, and by the way, look forward to my review coming very, very soon. If you want more info on juicy upcoming imports, be sure to check out the video about interesting ones primed for the very early part of this year. Check out that video after this video, as there is plenty you'll be needing to save for if you're into RPGs like myself. Anyways, the spotlight section. Alright, this is where I choose a random game in my collection to show off and talk about. Afterwards, we'll do the community spotlight. So, this week I want to talk about the Saikyo Shooting Volume 1. Why? Well, because it's a Japanese release, it came out last year, but next week it is being released in the West thanks to NIS America. You get 6 excellent arcade shooters. Well, 5, one's kind of only decent, but anyways, this import was worth every single penny for me, as I said in my review. In the West, this is being called Shooting Stars Alpha, and there's also a second volume which is getting a Western release next month called Bravo. I don't actually own that one for budgetary reasons, called my wife, and that's kind of silly because, to be honest, the games are even better on the second volume. Okay, so I'm not going to talk about this one too much here since you can just check out my review, because there is some slight confusion in the releasing. There were also some Asian releases even before these, and it gets very, very confusing. All you need to know is, shmup's good, worth buy. Alright guys, let's head into the community spotlight. You guys have been fantastic in sending in your pictures. Let's have a nice little look at what you ladies and gents have been adding to your collection. And if any of these games are taking your fancy, then there are links below in the description and pinned comment too, where you can find them for yourself. So, let's start with Westy90. They instantly gave me a warm, fuzzy feeling with this picture. Some great imports here. Super Robot Wars T, Dragon Quest Trilogy, and River City Girls, in case you missed Limited Run Games' Western release, plus some awesome shooters that don't get as much attention as some others out there. Cyviar, I can't say that name, and Raiden 5, plus that appears to be the Western release of Oninaki, which was only sold through Square Enix's website, I believe. I don't actually know if it's a rarity or not, but I would be surprised if this didn't turn out to be a bit of a collector's item in the future. Most of us will have to settle for the Japanese release, which thankfully does have English. Visipon sent us a couple of pictures with a nice collection of some really big hitters on the Switch, though personally I like to point out Tales of Vesperia, which is a fantastic game and looks wonderful on the Nintendo Switch. If you're into JRPGs, this is definitely one of the lower key releases that should get far more attention. I know it's an older game. Similarly, along with Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch. I loved it on the PS3, Juan loved it on the Switch in his review. A beautiful, emotional game full of heart, highly recommended. Choco Loco James sent in another picture after his last week's picture showing off the shooter that I can't say the name of properly. Anyways, this time he got me just as tempted with this collector's edition of Blade Arcus from Shining Rebellion. Most of you probably won't remember this, but this was one of the earliest import reviews that I did for the channel when I was still experimenting with the importing niche. Not many people watched it, I don't blame you. Imports don't get much obscure than this. This is a 2v2 fighting game that I found to be decent enough, not exactly the best on the system, but serviceable. Sadly, it doesn't have English on either the Asian release or Japanese release, but it's a fighting game, so not really important? I don't know. There is a bit of story to it, but nothing I thought missable. Anyways, I bought it specifically for review and then, sold it pretty much afterwards. I do that sometimes if I don't completely love a game. It stops me taking so much of a financial hit. But anyways, this collector's edition has got me wanting to buy it again. It has a CD with the theme song, an art book, and even a drama CD. I want to buy it again. Thanks, James. Thanks very much. Daniel Novak showed off 6 games. Astral Chain, oh my yes. Final Fantasy XII, another classic RPG that pretty much everyone should own. Dragon Quest Builders 2, heard nothing but great things about it. Well, aside from the frame rate. Harry Potter Collection, I got that for Christmas. Thanks, Mum. And Fire Emblem Warriors, a decent Masu style game that I paid an absolute arm and a leg to get an English version of here in China. That was not easy. Chris Hepburn showed off his collection that basically made my head burst because I just don't know where to look first. Well, we can see he is a fan of Nicholas stuff and NIS America, who both go for niche but quality, and you can always rely on them to give you something good. I really want to know more about Lapis Labyrinth. I've heard stirrings that actually it might be quite the hidden gem. Sadly, I can't get an English language version here in China, at least not when I've looked. Also, I'm severely jealous of that Fire Emblem big box. Chris Giles is a superstar and wanted to show off some slightly more obscure titles, which I always appreciate. Games like X-Morph, This War of Mine, and Northgard. You really don't see those too often. Well, at least I don't. I also really want to get my hands on Horizon Chase Turbo. I've seen it for sale and I'm waiting for that sweet spot price. Juan was very positive about it in his review. One of our biggest supporters, Chicken Perm, showed off his collection, some nice titles in there, but I'd like to point out Ys 8, a game that I very rarely see physically, despite it being a great action RPG. Also, that is a very pleasing rainbow of Joy-Cons. It's making me crave Skittles. Survivor showed off their quality collection, some big hitters, some great indie titles. This is the first time that I've ever seen evidence of Asterix and Obelix 3 actually being physical. I'd like to give a special shout out to Wargroove, Valfaris, and Children of Morta, all fantastic indies that everyone should take a look at. And finally we have Swizz, I don't know how to say his name, sorry, who over on Discord showed off some of their latest editions that finally came through the post. From left to right we have Code of Princess EX, originally a 3DS game that's come to the Switch. Check out James' review for more info. Omega Labyrinth Life, a risque mystery dungeon game full of boobs that get bigger and bigger the more you progress in a dungeon. No joke, nice game, but check out my review and gameplay footage for all the too hot for TV content. Super Robot Wars T, love seeing so many people having this one, my favourite import of last year. And finally, an old favourite of mine due to how many times I had to mention it in this series and its ridiculously long name, A Girl Who Chants Love at the Bound of This World. Yep, a remake of a classic visual novel adventure style game, although from what I've heard, not for the faint of heart. Thanks ladies and gents, I really appreciate you sending in your pictures. If you want to send in your recent additions, either 1 game or 5 games or 20 games, it doesn't matter because it's not a competition. Send it to me on Twitter over at SoWhatAboutGame. A DM is preferred, it helps me keep track of it better. Or you can email it into us at contactors@switchwatch.co.uk. Just make sure to start the email with Community Spotlight so that I don't miss it. Plus, we have a Discord which I set up last week and it's been nice to be able to chat with some of you guys, some of our viewers out there. So yeah, if you want to join our server either for this physical release or you just want to chat with us, the link is in the description below. Send your pictures on that if you want to, or just ask us some questions. Anything. Right guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode of New Physicals. What has taken your fancy this week? This year is starting to warm up a little bit in terms of new releases, so get those wallets ready. Be sure to check out last week's episode in case you missed it. Not much to miss. But anyways, my review of Super Robot Wars X, and don't forget James's bargains video telling you all the best ways to spend your money possible. We'll see you guys over there. Take care.